Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in this lesson video, we're going to take a look at the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution is a very broad topic. We're not going to get into every single detail of it, but the overall gist has to do with, think of it this way, people will start leaving the farms to move to cities to work in factories. If you can understand that, you have the most basic understanding of the Industrial Revolution. So we're going to cover how and why people move from farms to cities to work in factories, and how that adjustment to city life is going to create a whole bunch of new problems. At the same time, totally transform the way people live. So some hashtags you're going to be looking for. Again, these hashtags can be used some more than once. Some of your there's enough hashtags where you can put at least two per slide. So the first one we'll take a look at. These are in no particular order at all. Is hashtag high speed rail. For that one, think of the new high speed rails coming into California in the next 10 to 15 years, and how it's going to make transportation so much faster across our state. Hashtag hands off, meaning just leave me alone. Hashtag ratchet. I think you guys know what ratchet means. We're thinking ghetto. Hashtag monster energy. You guys all know I drink monsters every day to give me some energy in the afternoon. Keep that in mind. Hashtag no dating, meaning people shouldn't be going out. Boys and girls don't go out with each other. Keep that in mind. Hashtag strike. When people go on strike, they stop working to send a message to their boss. Hashtag work, 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 work. I know I can't sing, but you guys, I think, get that one. That's pretty easy to understand. Again, there's a duplicate there. Hashtag high speed rail. Again, I ignore it. The second one. Hashtag small is the new big. Keep that in mind. How there's going to be value in being small rather than big. Keep that in mind. Hashtag sharing is caring. This is a Rossi. You guys have been growing up with character counts, and one of the characters counts mottos is sharing is caring. Keep that in mind. And hashtag new day. So think of it's a brand new day, or you can think of it in the WWE version of the very entertaining tag team, the New Day. So no further ado, let's go ahead and get this party started. Again, this slide right here, you don't need to take notes from. So here in this first slide, we're talking, the title for this slide is, we call this the start in England. Now, the Industrial Revolution starts in England for a variety of reasons. One of the first reasons has to do with a topic, what we call the Agricultural Revolution. I want to write that down. Agricultural Revolution. And what that means is that there's going to be these changes in farming that are going to allow people to grow more food than ever. One of the changes comes with this invention right here. It's called a seed drill, which made by a man named Jethro Tull, who allows farmers to plant seeds better and faster than ever before. In addition, some farmers and scientists come up with new ways to make the soil more rich and more productive, so the food comes out bigger and better than ever before, and more food can grow in the soil. So these two inventions, along with a variety of others, are going to allow farmers to grow more food than ever before. Now, this all is going to start in England. Some of these inventions, they come from England, but the Industrial Revolution, where people start leaving the farms to go work in factories. Part of the reason why they leave the farms, well, is because you have these machines that do all the work for you, so there's really no job for you to do much on the farm. So you need to go to a city where there's a factory, and a factory you can have a good paying job. Now, why would these kind of factory jobs first start in England? Well, for one reason, England has a lot of rivers, and the first factories were powered by these water wheels right here. And when you have these fast-flowing rivers like you have all over England, you can just build your factory right next to the river, and the flowing water moves the wheel, which powers the machines inside. So England was a very good spot for the Industrial Revolution and the birth of all these factories to start. In addition, these factories are going to produce all these new goods. Can produce food, can produce clothing and other types of goods. And now, what do you do with it? How do you get this to the people who want to buy them in your country and around the world? Well, these rivers make transportation very easily. You can put them on a boat and just ship them wherever you need to ship them very quickly on the river. In addition, England is an island, so if you look around the island of England, there's a lot of these ports where ships from around the world can park. The people can unload them off the rivers and put them on the big ships, and then now they can go all over the world. So what's going to happen? Because England it's an island and has all the rivers, it's going to make it a very natural place for the Industrial Revolution to begin. Now, let's take a look here at what we call a topic called urbanization. The title of this slide is Urbanization, so you want to write that one down. Um, Urbanization is it's going to have a lot of benefits and problems. So a simple definition of urbanization is this: people are going to move to cities for jobs in factories. Think of it that way. Real simple definition: people move from farms to cities so they can find jobs in a factory. Now, what would be a benefit, a positive of this? Well, number one, there's plenty of jobs for people, so they're going to flock by the thousands, by the millions over a 100-year period from these farms to these cities. What's going to happen? A good part of this is they're going to create what we call an industrial middle class. What that means is you can have these people who are merchants who have things to sell. They're the ones in charge of selling the products made in the factories, and they're going to make a lot of money selling those products from the factories. Another part of the industrial middle class will be the inventors, these people who come up with these ideas to make new machines to make the factories work better. These people who are competing to make the best machine in the most efficient factory, they're going to make a lot of money coming up with these new ideas to make factories work better. Now, there are a lot of problems that go along with urbanization. Another social class that comes around because of urbanization is what we call the industrial working class. So think of this as peasants who used to be farmers, now they live in the city. Instead of being peasant farmers, we call them the peasant industrial working class. And life is not going to be much different in the city than it is on the farm. It might even be worse. So here we have what we would call the industrial working class. These workers who work in these factories or these farms, and they're going to live in places called tenements. Tenements are these high-rise, big apartment buildings, and it's very cramped. Sometimes you don't even have a window. You have all these people living right on top of each other. Maybe one toilet per floor in that building. There's even people who didn't have access to a toilet. They had to go use the restroom outside. There's no joke. They lived in certain really poor neighborhoods that were called slums. Think of these tenements in these poor neighborhoods where these workers lived. You can say were some of the first big city ghettos that ever came around. I mean, there's no little to no services such as obviously in this time there's no real electricity yet, but there's no sewage. So where's all your human waste going to go when you go to the bathroom? So that's going to create diseases and really horrible living conditions. So when you think of the word tenements, it's not a very nice place to live. So think of the most ghetto place you could ever live. But people were living there because they needed to live close to their job in the factory in the city, and it's all they could afford. If you were one of these workers here, you worked 12 to 16-hour days in very dangerous conditions. These guys right here, these guys actually worked in a mine. Where you're in a mine, it's very dusty, you have a hard time breathing, you could develop lung cancer very easily. These mines were known to cave in. There's a lot of flooding in mines, people drown, they get trapped. Very dangerous. And because there were so many people who wanted these jobs, a lot of the factory owners or the mine owners were like, well, if someone dies, we'll just find there's plenty of people to take their place. So I'm not really too worried about it. So they weren't really treated very well. They didn't have to get paid too much. I mean, they were willing to work, and you had people who weren't making a lot of money in really dangerous conditions. In some of the factories, A lot of people hired children. A lot of the factory owners wanted children, not because they were just mean, but children, as you see right here, uh, they fit into small, tight areas that full-grown adults cannot. So if you're in a mine and there's an area where there's some kind of mineral like coal that they want to get, but a man can't get in there, but a little kid can. They have small hands. If you're working in a factory and a machine breaks, some of these machines have very tight areas that a full-grown man can't get in there with their hands, but a small kid could. But the problem is this was very dangerous. If you're a child working on this, trying to fix a machine, and it somehow messes up, a lot of kids lost their hands, lost their fingers, lost legs, and many even died because they were working. A lot of these kids, had they never moved, their families never moved to the city, they would have been working on the farm. So these kids would have been working anyways. But as time goes on, one of the big problems we're going to see is that kids who should be in school are working. And this is going to create a huge problem. And part of the reason why we have a very huge public education system today is because we don't want our children being exploited like that. Now, let's take a look at some of the philosophies of the Industrial Revolution. So this slide's titled "Philosophies." The first one we'll take a look at is one of the Enlightenment thinkers that we covered already. This guy right here says Adam Smith, Scottish economist, and who is a big supporter of capitalism. Capitalism is the economy we kind of have today here in the United States. A lot of our ideas, the way we make money, comes from his ideas. Pretty much where we call it the free market, where the government stays out. And the idea that government stays away from business and lets business do their thing and not put too many taxes on there and too many rules. That he uses this term called laissez-faire. Something we have covered earlier. Laissez-faire means government, keep your hands off business. Leave us alone. Let business do their business. Let people find a way to make money their own way. Because if we put too many taxes and too many rules, we're not going to make enough money, and the government's the one that's going to benefit the most, not the people who are doing the work. So what Adam Smith is going to do, he's going to encourage people to start a business, start building a factory, produce more and more products. If you see that a factory across town is doing the same thing, find a way to do it better. That the competition is going to make better goods at lower prices. And the only way this can happen is the government stays out. The next philosopher we'll talk about here is this dude right here. His name was Thomas Malthus. Thomas Malthus. Now, Thomas Malthus looked at the growing population because people were healthier than ever before, living longer. The population was growing tremendously. And Thomas Malthus says, you know what? We need to control the population among our poor. There's too many poor people reproducing. We need to find a way to stop them from reproducing, because if we don't, we're not going to have enough food. We're going to starve. So Thomas Malthus suggested a variety of ways in which we can kind of control our population from growing. He saw that as too much population and these cities get bigger and bigger. It creates horrible living conditions like the tenement buildings where a lot of these industrial working class people lived, and it was a horrible way to live. He's like, dude, if we didn't have so many people living in such a tight area, then we would have enough resources to feed all these people, but we don't. So we need to find a way to kind of slow our population. Our next one we're going to take a look at is this dude right here. His name is David Ricardo. Now, David says, you know what, government, no more welfare. Shouldn't help the poor. Because you know what? If we keep on helping the poor, then you know what? They're never ever going to get out of poverty. He says that hard work is what's going to get you out of poverty in the long term. Yeah, the government can help you out. It might last you a few weeks, maybe a few months, maybe even a year. But after the help is gone, where are you? Have you improved at all? He says that if the government keeps on giving people too much help, they're never going to improve themselves. This goes back to an old Chinese proverb that says, if you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, then you feed him for the rest of his life. Meaning, yeah, if you help him for one day, you give that man a fish for one day, his belly is full for one day. But if you teach him how to fish and do it himself, then he can take care of himself the rest of his life. And that's kind of the idea that David Ricardo had, that we got to kind of stop having welfare, stop giving away too much help from the government, because people kind of, in his idea, kind of get lazy and just depend on the government helping out. Some people do take that help and improve themselves, but he said overall that we got to get rid of welfare. We need to let people figure it out for themselves, because that's the only way that in the long term they're going to help themselves. The next one we're going to take a look at here is the idea of socialism. Socialism is the opposite of what Adam Smith believes. Socialism is where instead of people making their own goods, come up with their own ideas, making as much money as they can, instead of that, the government owns everything. And the government owns everything. And they are what they're gonna do, the government will decide what you, the people, need. So if you have a bigger need than someone else, the government makes sure that you have a job and that all your needs are taken care of. So they decide what the factories are going to produce. They find the workers jobs, and they decide they have to determine what your needs are, and if you need so much, they give you what you need. Now, the idea of this, people think, oh yeah, this is a great idea because we'll always be taken care of. But what if you say, well, if I work my butt off, I can make more money, or I can make my life better? In socialism, it doesn't work that way. As long as you have what you need, then that's all the government cares about. The government doesn't want you to get better, to improve. They just want to make sure you have what you need. And at this time, when you have a lot of these poor people who are working their butt off, living in these horrible conditions, they figure, hey, socialism sounds like a good idea because I'm working my butt off and I'm not getting what I need. So a lot of people really identified with socialism as a way for them to have their needs met. But guys like Adam Smith are like, no, and David Ricardo as well, let people figure it out for themselves. Government, stay out of it. So we have these two competing ideas here. We have the idea of laissez-faire and capitalism from Adam Smith, and we have the idea of socialism from this guy right here, the most famous socialist ever. His name is Karl Marx. He wrote a very famous book called The Communist Manifesto. In this book, Marx talked about this fight between what he calls the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. It's a very fancy French word, bourgeoisie. Now, he calls the proletariat, these are the poor people who work in the mines, work in the factories. The bourgeoisie are that wealthier urban middle class, or the working class, or the factory owners, okay, those merchants, that the bourgeoisie doesn't care about the poor, that the proletariat needs to rise up and do not let these factory owners exploit them and use them and overwork them. So there's this whole idea here where the poor are getting robbed and taken advantage of by the rich, is where Karl Marx wants to stop that from happening, and that's why Karl Marx is a great example of socialism. He believes that the government should determine what these people need, and not let the rich people kind of just take advantage of them. Now, the last slide here, we're going to call this the impact of new technology and inventions. So again, the title of this slide is the impact of new technology and inventions. So we'll start here in the top left, and we'll talk about here one of the new inventions here has to do with the discovery of coal. I mean, coal had been around for a long time, but they figured out coal is a much better energy source than wood. And these factories, instead of a lot of times be powered by you burn a wood fire, or you're going to use the water wheel, coal produces so much more energy, which is going to make your machines run better, which allows these factories to produce more goods. So when it comes to business, if you can produce more goods faster, then the price of those goods go down. When the price of those goods down, more people want to buy it. So long story short, because they have a new energy source, they can produce things much faster, it lowers the prices, and more people want to buy your stuff. This is going to lead to a lot of these factory owners making more money, who are also going to create more jobs. So people overall are going to make more money. The next one here has to do with another mineral called iron. As we got better at finding iron and making things out of iron. Iron is a very heavy, strong metal. It's very strong, but not quite as strong or as lightweight as steel. But the first trains were made out of iron. The train and actually the tracks that they run on were made out of iron. And as we got better at making these things out of iron, we were able to build more and more railroad track and more trains. At this time in history, throughout the 1700s, 1800s, trains were the fastest way to get around. Today, we're like, this is slow. We all have cars. But at this time, trains were much faster than the alternative, which would have been horses. Or sometimes you had to depend on rivers and lakes and the oceans, which are very unpredictable. And you have to go whichever way that nature says. Well, with trains, we decide where we want to go. And what this is going to do is this is going to make transporting goods from these factories a lot faster and easier than ever before. So think of when it comes to business, if something becomes faster and easier to make and to transport, the price goes down. So when the price goes down, guess what? More people want to buy it. So if there's more people wanting to buy something because the price went down, because it became so much easier to make, then people make money. The factory owners, they're making more money, which means they're going to need to open up bigger factories, more factories, and that's going to create more jobs, and that brings more people into the cities looking for these jobs. The next one we'll talk about is here in the bottom left. We're talking about the agricultural revolution down here. So the improvements in agriculture. So as farming got better, we talked about the seed drill. We talked about better soil, which made more food, healthier food. Instead of tomatoes being one size, maybe they're even larger than ever before. So we're making more food, long story short. And more food means that people are going to be healthier. Healthier people live longer. So if people aren't dying nearly as much because they're healthier, population grows. So what do you do with a growing population? People need a job. And there's not enough jobs on the farms now because these machines have taken over, and the machines do what one machine can do the job of 10 people. So people say, well, if working on the farm is not good for me, so this larger population looking for jobs, they move to cities and they find those jobs in the factories. The last kind of impact of new technology and inventions has to do with labor unions. So factory workers in the beginning did not have a labor union. Factory workers, if you got hurt, well, if you couldn't work, the boss seriously fired you. Today, most kind of jobs have unions that protect the workers from bosses mistreating them. Well, in the very beginning of the whole Industrial Revolution, if you got hurt, you got fired. Well, people started saying, hey, that's wrong. We got hurt doing your job, working for your company. You should take care of us. You can't just fire us. So slowly but surely, unions became, in the beginning, they were illegal. But as time wore on, they became more powerful, and the government could not make them illegal anymore. And what's going to happen, they're going to fight for workers' rights. And as time goes on, as the unions become more powerful, more and more people are now going to get the right to vote. People will see that the government's going to say, hey, we need to give people the right to vote. We're going to give them the chance. So long story short, as more and more people worked in factories and unions became more powerful, voting rights got expanded over and over time, to the point where today we have, especially in our country, and in countries where the Industrial Revolution started in England, where all citizens of a certain age have the right to vote. But before this all happened, very few people had the right to vote.